I'm Rosanna Di Risio. I'm Creative Director of ERD and I've been there a great number of years and had an amazing time. I've brought in a project that actually symbolises pretty much all the things that I've trained to become, and one of the things I've always enjoyed working on is publications and books, and this is a book on Milan, and I've worked on this with Gabby and Emilio from ERD, and we spent a great number of years working on this project, and we completed it a couple of years ago, and or maybe even more. Time goes so quickly. But yes, it's an amazing product, and we printed it in Milan and produced it here though, and launched it in Milan, and it has been one of my pride and joys. And it's as all the years that you learn things, it's kind of all in here. It's absolutely all of it. It's learning to tell a story, which is what I've always enjoyed doing. And this story is unique, and it is totally based on passion, which this product is totally about passion. And it's about the difference that just going for absolute luxury and the best you can do in the time and not thinking about money. So it's all of those things that you don't get with commercial projects, and it's a project we collaborated with Robin Lee on, and these are her photos, and it's just all about that. I think it's very important to look at design as a vehicle to tell stories, to tell really meaningful stories, and that's why I think design can elevate a conversation, a story, a piece of design to another level. And it's when you are curious enough and interested enough in the subject matter that you really dig deep into it and then start to find ways of telling that story that is unique to that person or that project. And that story in that book was about a young person's drive to be a photographer in Milan, and her being totally new and going to Italy from coming from Ballarat was just an amazing experience for her. And as a studio, we took on that project with the same kind of verve that she took on that journey, purely because we were also, the three of us working on the project, have Italian backgrounds. We were born here, we were educated here, but we have such an affinity with Milan and Italy. So for us, it was the same kind of thing. So the struggle she had in Milan as a fashion photographer, we've had in Australia as young Italian people growing up in a very Anglo-Saxon world trying to make our mark in design. So it was the same kind of struggle, but the outcome is just incredible. We laser cut leather, we've printed amazing embellishments, we've laser etched pages, there's perfume on some pages, there's incredible screen printing and gloss varnishes and lots of different papers, and they're Italian papers, and worked with an incredible team in Italy. It is hand bound, so every book is made. I think it takes, I can't remember how many hours for the bookbinder to stitch all the sections together, and just all of those things you can't do at the beginning of your career. It's kind of like something that it's taken me over 30 years to get to that level, and of understanding of processes, but also of design. And the three of us that worked on the project, Emilio was really responsible for all the production and the innovation with the printers, and Gabby was totally immersed in the design part of it, and for me it was the storytelling, making sure that the story was there, that any embellishment or anything we did related to the stories. And so it was a very worthwhile project, and that project kind of is what I guess I was driving towards. I think you need those sorts of projects happening parallel to real work, because you can't underestimate the fact that Australia is a very conservative country, and to convince people to take risks is very difficult. And the younger you are, the harder it is to convince people to take risks. So if you don't have these other projects happening on the side, you will become very disillusioned with the business, because it is hard to spend other people's money, and you have to do it responsibly. And the younger you are, the harder it is to convince people to give you lots of money to produce beautiful things. But I see it happening more, and there's more good quality things out there. So I'm assuming it could be a little bit better, because remember, I'm not young now, so it's like I don't know what it's like to be young. But I have a very young attitude. When I started, you pretty much knew everybody in the graphic design business. Whenever you turned up to events that designers put on, and there might be 50 to 100 people there, you knew them all. But the business was small, and it felt a bit like a cottage industry. It certainly didn't feel professional. It didn't feel like it was a business. We were very closely linked to art. As time has gone on, the link to art has separated a little bit, and I see from the periods of when I was lecturing that young designers are more connected to music and culture and events, rather than actually being connected to art. And I think that's the biggest difference that I had. Design was linked to art. I was educated in an institution where we were common students, art and design students, and spent a lot of time cross-pollinating. So I feel like when I want to look for inspiration, I always look to art, whereas I'm not sure that is the case now. And the industry has grown so much and has become more professional, has become much more of a business as such. And I think that's the bit that I love and hate. I love the fact that we've become more professional, but I hate the fact that we're now driven by numbers and costings and schedules and budgets, and we have to be conscious of that all the time. And when I brief projects, I have to brief young designers with, you've got to do this in 5 hours or 10 hours, or we've got to present this, this and this. Whereas when I was starting out, it was more playful, it was more fun. We had a lot of downtime because a lot of our clients didn't understand what we were doing. So it's like if we said we needed 3 weeks, we got 3 weeks. Whereas as time has progressed, the client will say, well, why do you need 3 weeks for that? And I want it tomorrow, and I don't understand why you need so much time. And they don't understand that need that we have to play and to just experiment. And you can't do that if you've only got 5 hours to produce an entire poster or brochure or book or a piece of packaging. So the pressure has changed, and it's become more intense. Whereas we had more fun, more time. We would, play with projects and put it aside and work on another project and come back to it and then present to a client. And the client was a bit more relaxed about the experience. And if they came to you because they knew about what you did. They didn't come to you and then go, oh, well, we're actually talking to another 5 studios other than you. And it's like, so then the whole thing changes. It's not a relationship, it's a transaction. And that makes it difficult. And I think that's what's changed in our industry over a period of more than 30 years that I've seen, is that it's all very serious and businesslike. And I've always tried to maintain a level of playfulness even with the clients that I work with, that it's not, we're not putting a man on the moon, we're not removing tumours from brains, we're just designing things, and it should be fun, but should be connected to why are we doing it and what's the unique difference about what I'm doing compared to what, someone is doing over there. So I think that's the difference. It's become bigger, more commoditized. I basically did art in high school and left an ordinary girls' school out in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and it was pretty closed environment. I really didn't have any understanding about art or design, really, and thought that I could perhaps do painting at RMIT at the time, or perhaps painting at Phillip Institute, which was in Bundoora. And I showed my folio to about 3 universities. Well, they weren't universities, they were institutes at the time, and didn't think very much of it. Just got into one, and my folio was pretty bad. It was just a bit of abstract nothing. But got in and really found that wow, the first year of art and design at Phillip was incredible. It was a place where everything was there, from sculpture to painting to design to illustration, photography, everything was there. And it was a small school, so there were 35 students in first year, so it wasn't, it was, you got to know everybody and you got to know the design department and the fine art department, and you were allowed in first year to cross-pollinate. And that's when I actually discovered that I preferred design, and I preferred the challenge of solving problems for people. That design was about finding things that were interesting and unique and bringing that to the surface. And that really had more power for me than being a fine artist, where I really felt at 18, what on earth could I paint about that I could really make a difference in the world? I really needed to learn about life before I could do art. Whereas design, I could learn to understand the process and to work with it. So going through that course was amazing. There were amazing people teaching me, from Mimo Cozzolino to Fish Rutherford to Ned Cooley, Connor Slanas, and a lot of those people were illustrators. David Hughes was more of a designer. Zoe Allnutt was one of my lecturers, and the head of department, Max Rupert, was a very happy-go-lucky person, but very committed to design. So you really got a sense that this is actually a career. It's not going to be something that I might do for a little while, and it's going to take me a long time to learn about. And my background was very much just small family-orientated background, so I didn't really have a real big view of the world. So for me, it was just a slow burn. So from university, which I started off not even knowing how to use a rotary pen, to coming out at the other end 3 years later with an understanding of it. And I felt that I really needed to just get in, throw myself in, and then start traveling. So my first job was in a design department of a very small printing business. So I learned a lot about printing and techniques and things, but not much about design. So after that, I started traveling, and then when I came back, that's when I really started looking at, okay, where do I want to be in design? So I started applying for jobs at studios and found that actually I'm not going to fit in very well here. And I really got that sense of, as a woman, this was going to be hard. And I didn't really know that I wanted to be with an industry that was male dominated. And I pretty early on thought, I'm just going to have to do what I need to do to get to a point where I have enough experience that I can do it myself and approach it with my own way of doing it rather than the typical way. And after a period of time of working a little bit with Cozzolino Hughes, and then Mimo became Cozzolino Allnutt, working with them as well. I've worked with Russell Bevers, I've worked with Max Robinson, Heather Towns, and did a lot of freelance and worked in television and worked in publishing. So I worked with different publishers at the time, and then ran a small business with a couple of other designers. And through all these different experiences, actually found that I was really after a very professional approach to design rather than that, small cottage industry feel. So I then started becoming involved with people in advertising and started getting on board with more strategy and thinking behind design and actually presenting that as a conversation about uncovering stories. And through this, though, I had to take a break because I got married and I had a child, and he's now 26, no longer a child. But I spent about 6 years being there for him as a small child, and then my husband and I swapped roles, and he looked after our son when he was a teenager, and I then tried to get back into the industry and tried working, and it was really difficult, I've got to say. I was only out of the industry in full-time work for 6 years, and in that 6 years I started lecturing and doing publishing work at the same time, but very part-time. When it came back to showing a folio and trying to get work in a serious studio, and I would have been about 35, so not really that old. No one wanted to know me. You've been out of the industry, you don't have any relevant experience. And in the whole scheme of things, being out of an industry for 5 years, 6 years is not really a very long time. But you were made to feel incredibly inadequate. And I basically had to start at the bottom. I had to take a huge salary cut. It was almost like I just came out of college. If I had have left any more time, I think it would have been almost impossible to get back in. And if it wasn't for Max Robinson, who sort of gave me a job, it would have been a difficult thing to get back into. So from there, then I joined ERD after that. So kind of that brings it like 20 years later, and joined Emilio's studio, and he is the director of ERD. And when I joined as an employee and helped him grow his business. We both have different skills. He's come from an advertising background and I've come from a design background. And so those sort of combinations have worked really, really well over the years. And in the early stages, the typical scenario for a designer is, well, you become a partner when you're, a serious player in a business. And I had run businesses before and I'd seen other partnerships and how they ran. And I really didn't think that I needed to do that. I really felt that my core interest is design, producing the best I can possibly produce for people, and being as innovative as I can. I really wasn't interested in being a partner and conscious of how to run a business and running a business, because I'm good at being bossy, and I could easily fall into that category of having to run a business and be a general manager. And I really felt that I was not really ready for that and didn't really want to do that. I had done that and I hated it, because it just meant that I was not part of the creative process anymore in the same way. I mean, you are, because you're running a creative business, but you're not physically there with the client nutting out problems and looking at projects and jobs and what you're going to achieve. So it was a different, and I definitely need a person to run a business, because design, if it doesn't have those people running it, just quickly dissipates and just becomes, a little bit, it doesn't have direction. And you become overwhelmed. You're just doing too much for everyone. So I've kind of arrived at that point where, do I want partnerships, don't I? And I no, I don't think you need to do that. You can still be paid well, be keen about what you're doing. It doesn't diminish your commitment to a job because you're not a principal in that business. I think it's about the work, and if you're still interested in that work and still excited by that work, but why is it less if you're not a partner? I mean, I don't understand that logic. And it's interesting, over the years, people have always felt that I was a partner, and I guess that's, again, why does that matter? I still think, why does it matter? I mean, I'm committed to the work and I do the work well. So, and that's quite a coincidence, yes, that the RD is me, but it's not. It's Emilio Roccialetti Design. So it's a strange thing. But interesting when we meet new clients and meet people, even though I'm the creative director and Emilio's the director of the business, the conversation will always be directed to the male. And, I know this is part of our conversation about how women are in this business, but it doesn't help that I'm small, because when we enter into a room, like, Emilio is quite tall, and the clients just automatically think that that's where the conversation needs to direct, and he's not doing that intentionally. But it's amazing how society just automatically gravitates towards the male as being the principal person who's going to run the conversation. So it's an interesting dynamic in business. It takes a while to work that out. I think learning where you've come from is very important, and understanding how you fit into the bigger picture is important. Whether you just look at your local community to the wider community, and looking in the past is a great way of understanding what you can bring to the future conversation. If you start from nothing and you just go from here on, you really are just building on what you know. And it's important to have a much deeper understanding of where you come from. And I think the Australian culture is a very unique culture, and understanding the Australian vernacular in the bigger picture of the world is really important, because we bring a different attitude to design. We bring a much more daring, irreverent, exciting, playful approach rather than a more conservative, more conscious of the boundaries. You are really free, and I think that's part of our history and who we are. So it's important to understand that. It's difficult, I know, in this environment now where there are lots and lots of different cultures coming into universities, and it's quite a different way of having a conversation. So understanding who you are and understanding where they've come from is equally as important, and history is all part of that. And I think that if you're not interested in where you've come from, it's very hard to create new. And how can I be different from where I've come from? So as a designer who's been in the industry for a long time, I do see a lot of young people not interested in the past, not interested in history, and have no real understanding of how their approach to design and type and colour, how it connects to the past. And if they make the effort, you can see that they are better designers. They definitely are. I've worked with so many young designers, and the ones that are interested in art and music and festivals and culture and food are better designers. They just are more rounded. I think the short answer is just by staying in it and not disappearing, basically. And that has been my main motivation. Obviously, I need to work. I love to work, and working in design has been amazing. But the thing that I enjoy the most is nurturing young designers and bringing them into that level of understanding and taking them on that journey. And I've done that by having staff that are always young, that are coming out of courses, and also by lecturing, also being part of the industry, always participating, attending, and just being there, being visible rather than not attending. And I do have a lot of other peers that, you know, I'll always say, let's go to this talk or let's do this, and young women, and they're like, oh no, I'm too busy to do that. No, I'm not really interested. And it's like, come on, this is your industry. If you don't participate, if you're not part of it, how can you be visible? But they're not interested. There's a lot of them that just don't want to be there. But for me, it's just being there and nurturing young talent has been a really important part, and that's how I've seen myself contributing. I don't feel like I need to be the president of AGDA or on the chair of this board. I'm really horrible in committees. I'm really horrible in team practices. I just get cut to the chase too quickly, and I can't stand dribble. So I don't participate in committees. Never have been a good participant. I like to lead, so that's probably one of the things that has driven me, that, you know, just got to do it and keep doing it. So that's how I feel I've contributed. I think the benefits are that people will gravitate towards you. They know who you are. They have a sense of you. And it's easier to be part of that community if you're participating in that community. If you're not there, you're not invited. Your opinion is not sought. You don't have respect amongst your peers because you're invisible. No one really knows where you are and what you're doing. From that point of view, I find being active and visible in the industry allows me to employ great people because they want to come and work for me. They want to come and help me. They enjoy the projects that they work on with me. I always encourage people through that process. I'm not the kind of creative director that will smother the person. I really enjoy seeing what they bring to the table. And my job is to just prod and to just get them to be confident about what they're doing and always heading towards a particular course because I'm the one controlling the conversation with the client creatively. But my job is not to smother them. My job is to nurture them. So it's kind of like you've got, in that relationship, you are a little bit invisible. You're just there in the background. But when it comes to the face of design and being out there and trying to get excitement around what you do have to participate. You do have to be visible. So I guess as a female, you can dip in and out of that. Sometimes you choose not to participate in the man conversation going on in the room, and you can stand back. But I find it hard to keep quiet, so it'll be, it's always a problem. Sometimes I say things I shouldn't say, but hey, that happens. And I constantly get reminded of some of the extreme things that I've said, and I can be very assertive when the situation is ambiguous. I will put my foot in and kind of go, no, I think it should be like this. And I have had that situation where there would be 5 to 10 people in the room, mainly men, and you have to push a bit harder. Otherwise, you're going to get walked all over. So, I really encourage women to learn the difference between aggression and assertiveness, because there is a distinction, and it's all about language. So it's how you work with the language that gets you through that situation. So just developing a softer, calmer approach as opposed to a violently loud approach seems to win at the end of the day. Australians respond well to just a calm conversation, as opposed to Italians who enjoy a very angry conversation. It's just learning how to be you, really, is the thing. The biggest thing that I want young people to understand is that they need to be curious, they need to be well read, well informed, and they need to love people. So if they don't want to be in those categories, they shouldn't be doing design, because design is about doing things for other people. And if you are afraid to speak to people and engage with people, this is not the industry for you. So I really encourage young people to think about all of those things and to be curious above all. That's what I think universities are all about. To me, a university shouldn't be preparing you for industry. A university should be preparing you for a way of learning, a way of looking, a way of seeing, a way of understanding. It's not about knowing how to use Illustrator or Photoshop. It's about why, the why, and that's really important. That's what a university should. It should be a playground, not a place where I come out with my degree and I'm going to be the experienced designer when I come. No, you're at the beginning of your journey, and you need to understand how to work in that industry, not how to be an expert after 3-4 years. You can't be an expert straight out of university, but you can learn all the things that you need to have in your suitcase when you're out there. So that's my advice to students.